Hey everybody, today we are going to be watching a film that came out in 1985, which was the year I was born. I didn't see this film till many years later, and it has become one of my favorite go-tos for around the October Halloween season, as I am a very seasonal movie watcher. And that movie is Fright Night.
Welcome to Fright Night.
Fright Night, at its core, is a very simple tale. It follows the main character, Charlie Brewster, played by William Ragsdale, and basically he's a young high school student who loves his horror movies, loves watching vampire hunter shows. We'll get into that. He's dating a girl, Amy, and the film opens up with basically them, you know, in their lustful youth. She's apprehensive, he wants to get on with it, and just basically building those characters quickly. The setting is deep suburbia. Great vibes in the beginning. It's just Charlie and his mom, and it turns out that basically as we get right into it, mysterious neighbors start moving in next door. And as Charlie is observing them, he realizes that, hey, they're bringing in odd things. That looks like a coffin. What's going on? Is that person getting killed? And as the film goes on, he notices this more often, especially in the first act.
What are we gonna do? This is just like Fright Night.
Now for the 2 o'clock news. Another body of a young woman was discovered early this morning in back of the Sheridan Mall.
See that? I don't have any choice. Somebody has to stop him.
So Tom Holland directed this. He really hasn't done much, but he's done Child's Play. He did Thinner. And he did the Fright Night remake in 2011 with Colin Farrell, David Tennant, and God rest his soul, Anton Yelchin. What a terrible accident that was. But as a remake, it was solid. It was good. A little over dramatic. It took itself a little too seriously. A little too dark. Again, it missed that charm that the original had. Charlie loves the character of Peter Vincent, who hunts vampires. Peter Vincent is a character in this film that has a television show where he hunts vampires, and ironically enough, the show is entitled Fright Night. Peter Vincent is a character in this film who really doesn't have a prominent role till the second half, but it's played by Roddy Mcdowall, who is an incredible actor. I just covered him in Bedknobs and Broomsticks. The guy's filmography is about this thick, just the ultimate working actor, the ultimate character actor, and I would say this film, he really knocks it out of the park, because he was a little older when this film was developed or produced in the 80s, but his not super old, but he adds another layer and another arc of a character aside from our main character into this film.
Satisfied? Oh, totally.
Well now, Charlie, you saw that. Are you convinced now that Mr. Dandridge is not a vampire?
The neighbors who move next door, the main vampire is played by Chris Sarandon, Jerry Dandridge, who is really a captivating character. He's got charisma, he's got charm, but there's also a side to him that's ugly, that he's hiding, and that's the vampirial side. You know, he has women showing up and they're disappearing, and Charlie, as the film goes on, becomes more and more and more obsessed with figuring out what's going on next door as his friends like Evil Ed, Amy, his girlfriend on and off, and his mom become a little worried about his obsession over this.
I'm waiting for the guy he lives with to leave, and then I'm gonna go next door and find his coffin and pound this through his heart.
That's murder, Charlie.
You can't murder a vampire, Amy.
The dynamic between Charlie and Jerry, and let's go back a little bit because Jerry does have an assistant working with him, this creepy guy who's basically like the what is it from Dracula? The Renfield version of the modern day Dracula, right? But I didn't realize till the end that he actually is not a vampire. He's just almost like a ghoul minion of his, which is an interesting angle. But anyways, you have these two guys living next door, Jerry Dandridge, the master, the main vampire, his assistant, and Charlie, who's onto him.
Do you realize how much trouble you've caused me?
So their dynamic is quite interesting. You know, Jerry Dandridge, the vampire, Jerry, we'll just call him, played wonderfully by Chris Sarandon, almost gives him outs in the beginning. Almost said, listen, you do your thing, I'll do my thing. you know, it's all good, but Charlie never gives in and wants to stop him and is obsessed with exposing him. So as the film goes on, Jerry gets more frustrated, there's more threats, there's more moments of attempted violence, there's threatening moments. There's a moment where Jerry basically introduces himself to the mother, and the mother loves him and she's charmed by him, so she invites him into the house, which Charlie is freaked out by.
What's he doing here?
I invited him over for a drink.
What?
I invited him over. Why?
What's the matter, Charlie? Afraid I'd never come over without being invited first?
And still at this point in the movie, no one believes Charlie. He's just a loon. He even gets the cops involved to come find out what's going on and show them the reality that he thinks is existing next door. And again, through Jerry's charm and, you know, innocent mockery of Charlie, the cop is dissuaded, Charlie's laughed at, and basically all is put away. But Charlie is still obsessed with finding it. So you also have this character of Evil Ed, who's Charlie's friend. And I would say Ed's a cool character, but for some reason in this whole movie, he might be the weak point for me. He kind of annoys me, and he's just grating, and he never stops.
Oh, you're so cool, Brewster.
He's never really a good friend. He's kind of nasty the whole time, but I guess that's his character, and he does fill out that 80s punk vibe. He's kind of a dick, so, you know, it doesn't bother me too much. But if I was to nitpick, I would say I wish Ed had maybe a little bit of a diversity when it comes to his character elements and his personality. But knowing his fate, becoming a vampire at some point, it does work out. Because at the end of the day, Ed is almost like insecure in himself, so he projects this attitude, and it works well with his vampire because he really just gets his ass kicked anyways.
What have you done to me?
Back!
Ow!
So later on in the film, Charlie approaches Peter Vincent, but it turns out his TV show's not doing well anymore, nobody's interested, and he really doesn't have the time for Charlie. He humors him, you know, and whatnot, but once Charlie tells him that he is a real vampire, he's completely freaked out, and it's like, all right, kid, leave me alone. So his friends come up with this plan to bring Peter Vincent in and say, we need help to show Charlie that the neighbor is not a vampire. So they come up with this whole orchestrated plan to meet with Jerry next door and to prove to Charlie that he is not a vampire. And this is the part of the movie where it kind of shifts and everybody realizes, because, you know, they have him drink the holy water, nothing happens. Peter Vincent tries all these things just to prove to Charlie and put his mind at rest that, no, there's not a vampire living next door. And on their way out, as Peter Vincent is looking in his mirror, he notices there's no reflection of Jerry, and it completely shocks his world.
Come on, let's get out of here.
Just a minute.
That goes for you too, Ed. I expect we have a lot of the same interests, you know, in horror movies and the occult.
He freaks out, his whole aura changes, and they leave quickly. And Jerry realizes that he's onto him too, because he found a piece of the mirror on the ground.
Please, Mr. Vincent, you have to tell me. Our lives depend on it.
All right. He didn't cast a reflection in my mirror. Satisfied now?
Mr. Vincent, you have to call the police.
And, you know, I'm not going to get into the full-on plot. I'll just talk about the vibes of this movie. When you think about 80s horror, aside from the Halloween legacy sequels, the Friday the 13th, the Return of the Living Deads, these are all top tier movies, and it goes on and on and on. I mean, you got the Hellraiser. It's just, you know, it's countless, especially during that decade. But Fright Night is really up there as one of the best. You know, it kind of retooled the vampire lore. It doesn't take itself too seriously. It's funny at moments. It's kind of creepy and scary at moments, but there's also this kind of like 80s aura around it. When they go to the nightclub and Jerry's seducing Amy and Charlie's getting pushed on the outs, and, you know, the dancing sequences, and or when Jerry's going down the alleyway and when he confronts Evil Ed and he basically says no one will bother you anymore, and he turns Evil Ed into a vampire.
All you have to do is take my hand. Here, Edward. Take my hand.
This movie is quintessential 80s cool, and Jerry's cool, and Charlie's a cool high school character, and they all have their own quirks. And the suburban aspect definitely adds to that element, because a lot of 80s films did take place in suburbia as everything kind of got pushed down to that. Suburbs, you know, were really an important part of our culture, and a lot of people could relate to that. So to take like the Dracula lore of the ancient castles and the Carpathian Mountains and kind of reduce that and not, I don't want to say reduce, and almost transfer that into a suburban setting was brilliant. Almost like when Poltergeist said, hey, we're going to take the haunted house, the mansions, the estates, the creepy Victorian homes, and do a haunted house in suburbia.
It's chilly out here.
Oh, no, it isn't. It's beautiful.
So once pretty much they're all aware that Jerry is now a vampire and something is going on, there's more of a threat presence. Peter Vincent's aware, but now he doesn't want to help. He wants to run away. So Peter Vincent, once he realizes that Jerry's a real vampire, he's holed up in his room. And as he's holed up in his office or wherever he is, Evil Ed then confronts him. And this is what's interesting, is you have this character of Peter Vincent who really is just an illusionist. He's not really hunting vampires. He has his show. And he's not, I guess he's kind of a coward once he realizes this has happened. And Roddy Mcdowall sells it perfectly, that he has to now turn and maybe, you know, redeem himself. And you know, maybe this is real. Maybe I am a real vampire hunter. So he grabs a crucifix and he pushes Ed out of the house, and it kind of gives him another boost of strength and confidence. So movie goes on. Basically, Amy is seduced to become one of Jerry's concubines, and she's holed up in there, and they're going to confront him, and Peter Vincent and Charlie are going to take care of it. And basically the whole end confrontation is so cool. You have Evil Ed and Peter Vincent coming face to face again, and this great practical effects moment when Ed, as the vampire, or he turns into a wolf too, is basically staked or stabbed or hit hard with a death blow, falls, and Peter Vincent is looking at him. Basically, it's really odd. It's almost like a very emotional scene where Ed is, as his wolf self, kind of converting back to the human form, but he's like convulsing, he's dying, it's very gross, and Peter Vincent almost has this like, and it's all Roddy Mcdowall, this look of sympathy over him, this look of, whoa, okay, like, this is unbelievable, like, I can't believe I'm seeing this, I can't believe this is actually happening, this poor soul. And then Ed is revealed and he dies, and it's just an emotional kind of ending for the movie that it is. And it's a great arc for Roddy Mcdowall, and Charlie comes to his own. They basically defeat Jerry, they kill his minion, and it's this great scene where they're just cutting holes and light is blasting in and Jerry's being overpowered. But at its core, it's an 80s fun, I guess, adventure, youth movie in the vein of The Goonies, which may be a little more violent than The Goonies, a little more rated R than The Goonies, but just like that kind of authentic youth, no holds bar. You got a kid who wants to get laid with his girlfriend. It's real. Nobody's playing it safe. You got cool characters. There's a lot of cool little things in this film too. Like, for example, when Peter Vincent first holds up his cross to Jerry to confront him, it doesn't work, and Jerry says,
You have to have faith for this to work on me, Mr. Vincent.
And Charlie's does work because he has faith, so Peter Vincent has to learn to have his faith again. And later on, when they're trying to save Amy and confronting Jerry and they kill his minion, Peter Vincent lures Jerry into the light and his faith is restored because the cross is now working. And then Jerry turns into a bat, flies into his coffin, they get to him, and then they kill him with all the light, and Amy is returned to her human form. And then classic 80s, they leave you with a little bit of a cliffhanger, not an after credit scene, which I can't stand, but a little cliffhanger at the end. And there was a sequel to this movie, which I really haven't heard good things about. I haven't seen it. Maybe I'll watch it one day, but to me, this is just such a good one-off 80s horror movie. And the biggest key to me when it comes to 80s horror and what sets this apart, and I had said this earlier, is that it doesn't take itself too seriously. It combines so many elements that form a perfect package of an enjoyable, well-paced, well-produced movie.
Charlie, can you hear me?
So if you have not seen it, it's October. Please go and check out Fright Night.